The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Dear Lord, may your eyes be on the righteous and your ears open to their prayers. In your mercy, redeem us that we would be worthy to stand before you. Enable us to hold our tongues from malicious intent. Prevent our lips from speaking deliberate deceit. But strengthen us that we would turn away from evil and do good. In your eyes, O Lord, what does that really mean? Few of us are so ensnared by malevolence that we would not desire to do what is right by you, but speak into our sense of self-assurance and remind us that our adversary gains a foothold if we do not have unity of spirit, sympathy, love for one another, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Guard us then against the insidiousness of evil, so that our natural response would not be to repay offense or disagreement with our own wrongdoing, but may we find ways to seek concord. Inspire us to pursue peace. For your eyes, O Lord, are on the righteous. Your ears are open to their prayers. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox.
Please join in the pledge to our wonderful flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the St. Mary's Area Middle School Team Renaissance Club, whose mini-thon event raised a record $18,281 for the fight against childhood cancer in March. Inspired by Penn State's Thon, the day-long event took place during the school day and included hourly themes such as beach, carnival, and glow hours. The event included numerous events for students and staff, including cornhole, bingo, karaoke, a photo booth, and the student favorite Silly String Your Principal Challenge. Although students at St. Mary's Area Middle School have demonstrated their dedication and generosity through the mini-thon for many years now, this year's event was even more special since local toddler Reggie Housley is currently battling leukemia. Proceeds from the mini-thon will benefit Four Diamonds, a Hershey-based organization that pays 100% of non-covered medical expenses for childhood cancer patients at Penn State Health's Children's Hospital. I commend the St. Mary's Area Middle School Team Renaissance Club for the extraordinary success of their mini-thon and the entire St. Mary's community for their kindness and their generosity in the fight against childhood cancer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde community have always been stewards of Oregon's land and natural resources. And like so many other indigenous peoples, they've faced tremendous injustices at the hands of the federal government. That is why I rise today in support of my very first bill in Congress, the Grand Ronde Reservation Act Amendment of 2023, to correct those past injustices. In 1994, the tribe sought to fix a survey error, which led to the federal government making yet another error that removed Grand Ronde's right to pursue any further land claims, even if more mistakes are discovered. No other tribe in Oregon faces this kind of restriction. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde shouldn't either. We are not responsible for the ills of the past, but we are responsible for remedying them today. My bill contributes to that, and I thank my Oregon colleagues for supporting. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 5, the Parents' Bill of Rights. House Republicans made a commitment to America that we would bring up the Parents' Bill of Rights today. We're keeping that promise. The numbers speak for themselves. In the 1 month since the Parents' Bill of Rights was introduced, thousands of parents have signed on to it. This massive surge of support proves that parents want more of a say in their children's education. President Biden's Secretary of Education recently said parents are missing in action. He's just wrong. Parents are more motivated than ever, and they want us to take action. The bill before us today is about every mom, every dad, and most importantly, every student in America. We believe parents should be able to know what your children is learning, know your tax dollars are being spent, and whether your child is safe in school. And that's exactly what the Parents' Bill of Rights does. When we introduced the Parents' Bill of Rights, we numbered it H.R. 5. That's an important reason why. That is the age that children start kindergarten. But also, this bill protects 5 important parental rights. 1, the right to know what's being taught in schools and to see the reading materials. No one is arguing that parents should dictate what is being taught, but parents should be able to see their school's curriculum, publicly know what books are in the library, and get timely notice about any plans to eliminate gifted and talented programs. 2, the right to be heard. When we saw Biden's Justice Department lash out at concerned parents and label them domestic terrorists, parents should be allowed to address school board meetings, have their First Amendment rights respected, and have a say in their children's education. 3rd, the right to see a school's budget and how your tax dollars are being spent. 4, the right to protect your children's privacy. Parents should be able to control how any third party uses their children's personal data. 5th, the right to be updated on any violent activity at school. If there is violence at school, parents deserve to know. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, the zip code you live in, or the wealth you have. Once you are a parent, you'll give your life for your child. You have a right to get the basic information about your children's education. And with the Parents' Bill of Rights, you will have that. The Parents' Bill of Rights is an important step towards protecting children and dramatically strengthening the rights of parents. Mr. Speaker, in America, education is the great equalizer. Every child deserves a great education. And we know that if parents are empowered, students will succeed. For that reason, I urge all my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 5, the Parents' Bill of Rights. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and extend and revise my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today and honor the legacy of Imam Abdullah El Amin, whose memory would live on in hearts of communities across Metro Detroit. Imam El Amin was a proud Detroiter. He was also a spiritual leader who created strong ties to our diverse community throughout his impactful service work. Imam El Amin has always been passionate in his belief that interfaith dialogue creates stronger, more meaningful relationships across cultures. In 1983, he was one of the founding members of the Muslim Center of Detroit, a masjid that was formed as an outreach center to bring people from different religious backgrounds together. As a spiritual leader, he witnessed the need for compassionate end-of-life care in communities throughout the area and was inspired to found an organization called Crescent Janazah Services to support countless individuals in their transition. I still remember, Mr. Speaker, after a speech, I had stated one of my favorite verses, favorite surahs in the Quran, which is, "With hardship comes ease." He came up to me with a big smile and he said, "That's also my favorite verse." So please join me in honoring the memory of Imam Abdullah El Amin as we mourn his loss. Allah yarhamu.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Iowa seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. March Madness is among us, and I'm thrilled to say that the University of Iowa, Iowa State University, and my own Drake Bulldogs have made it. Unfortunately, most of us are now out of our brackets and trying to pick up the pieces. But I recognize that today the University of Iowa women's basketball team with Coach Lisa Boulder, along with Caitlin Clark, a standout college basketball player with the Iowa Hawkeyes, is ready to take it to the court tonight. Iowa is ready to cheer on our Hawkeye women in the Sweet 16 tournament, and we want to wish them the very best of luck in their game today. The coaches, the staff, the parents, the alumni, and all Iowans who are watching across the country and the world tonight have been there from the beginning. Thank you for your dedication to make this happen. I also want to send out a shout out to a very special player from West Des Moines, Iowa, Caitlin Clark. She's a favorite National Player of the Year, and on March 5th, 2023, Caitlin put up 30 points, 17 assists, 10 rebounds, the lead in her team to clinch its second straight Big Ten tournament title. And you can tell I have been screaming and cheering her on from the sidelines the whole way through. Caitlin is the only player, male or female, in the past 20 seasons to achieve 25 points, 15 assists, 10 rebounds in a single game. And she did it not once, but twice. Caitlin, you have made Iowa so proud. You are in a league of your own with your record-setting career, and it's only just beginning. We look forward to watching you and the Hawkeye women do what you do best on the court tonight. Go Hawks. Mr. Chair, I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise to extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, we mark the 13th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act. Thanks to President Obama, Americans have been reassured that they can receive the care they need. Since it was passed into law, the Affordable Care Act has lowered health care costs for families and insured more than 35 million Americans. Democrats' passage of the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act made ACA subsidies more generous, which lowered health insurance costs and helped 29,000 people in my district, Mr. Speaker. Now they have access to affordable health insurance. House Democrats continue to protect the Affordable Care Act today. While MAGA Republicans support proposals to cut Americans' health care, House Democrats will always stand to protect Americans' health care. I will always put people over politics today, tomorrow, and every day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in honor of Tyler Jamison, Michigan's 2023 Mr. Basketball Award recipient. Tyler is from Michigan's 9th District, playing basketball for the Huskies of Port Huron Northern. And let's just say, Tyler's really good. This season, Tyler averaged over 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. And he led his team to the district semifinals just a couple weeks ago. But Tyler's not only an impressive athlete, he's an impressive student too. This year, while playing basketball at an extremely high level, Tyler has maintained a 4.7 GPA. Quite an impressive and incredible number. This showcases his hard work and dedication to important things in life, such as education. So congratulations, Tyler, on becoming our state's Mr. Basketball, and best of luck to you in your future endeavors. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek? I'm sorry. Oh. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Vermont seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we are in the midst of a terrible mental health crisis among youth in our nation. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Its recent youth risk behavior survey reveals that our kids are really struggling. 1 in 14 girls reported seriously considering attempting suicide in 2021. And LGBTQ teens and girls report extremely high levels of mental distress, violence, and substance abuse. They need us to stand up for them. They need us to stand with them. We need to make investments that will actually help. We have real work to do. But what do my Republican colleagues have us spending time on this week? A sham bill that does nothing for our kids. It inserts the federal government between parents and students and schools. It promotes censorship. It promotes banning books. It's not about freedom. It's not about protecting kids. As a former teacher and as a mom, I know that all children deserve a safe and affirming school environment. When I talk to Vermont families, which I do all the time, they aren't concerned about these kind of culture wars. They need us to take our jobs seriously and address their real, everyday concerns. That's why I'm in Congress.
Time's expired.
I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition.
Address the House for 1 minute. Advise to extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise again today to demand that Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg resign. As we've outlined over the past weeks, Buttigieg is simply not interested in doing his job as head of the DOT. A leader's job is to roll up their sleeves, do the hard work, and complete the mission of the people that he's overcharged with. Instead, Buttigieg is focused on advancing a woke identity politics inside that agency and in our culture. And as a trucker, I know that safety is a top priority, and Buttigieg needs to be held accountable for neglecting that safety in favor of a left-wing social agenda. The industry they oversees, you see, they don't have, their job's not inside four walls. Our offices are in the airways, the waterways, the railways, and out on the roadways with you and your families. But the Secretary doesn't even go outside to visit with folks. Instead, he stays inside or goes on vacation to think about skin color and the gender instead of what matters. It's not the place of the Secretary to carry out his social agenda at the DOT. It's time for him to resign and to take that social agenda outside of government. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you. Pursuant to House Resolution 241 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union to further address House Resolution 5. H.R. 5. Will the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Jimenez, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House of on the State of the Union for the further consideration of the bill H.R. 6, which the clerk will report by title. I'm sorry, H.R. 5.
A bill to ensure the rights of parents are honored and protected in the nation's public schools.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Thursday, March 23rd, 2023, amendment number 18, printed in House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Miller, had been disposed of. It is now in order to consider amendment number 19, printed in the House Report 118-12. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk for H.R. 5.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 19, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I also want to lend my thanks to the gentlelady from North Carolina for her stewardship of the legislation we're addressing this week. I'm offering this amendment because I believe it is critically important for parents to have the ultimate say in the education of their children. And while I first want to say that I support, as my colleague from Kentucky, Mr. Massey, does, eliminating the Department of Education altogether and leaving this to parents in the states, and while I would frankly prefer to just block grant dollars to the states and give them full control in the absence of actually eliminating the Department of Education, which my next amendment will address, then if we're going to be operating in this framework, then we might as well ensure that parents at least can have the benefit of dollars getting to them directly to be able to do as they see fit to educate their parents. The Parents' Bill of Rights is designed to try to empower parents, give them the ability to see what their children are learning, see the curriculum. Despite the wailing and gnashing of teeth of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle with wild accusations of book banning that is completely inaccurate and devoid of fact, the fact is we're trying to empower parents to be able to see what their children are learning. My amendment, though, would give parents recourse by allowing them to take their tax dollars, the dollars that they send to Washington for a purpose, and put it towards the education of their choice. Again, I would rather they not be laundering the money through this godforsaken town. I would rather that that money be going directly to the schools in their neighborhoods. But if it's going to come here, I'd like them to at least get the benefit of getting that money back to be able to use to educate their children the way they believe is best for them. I introduced this policy as a standalone bill called the School Act in 2020 with my good friend Senator Rand Paul, when parents' tax dollars were going to schools that closed their doors during pandemic, that shut kids out of schools, that forced them into the corners with masks. The results of that have been catastrophic. 23 Baltimore schools have 0 students proficient in math per state test results. Chicago Democrats are sounding the alarm on 55 schools reporting no proficiency in math or reading, and there's very serious concerns. In 2022, the National Center for Education Statistics evaluated the progress of children during the pandemic and revealed reading ability had suffered the largest decline since 1990. To my colleagues who say that this defunds schools, first off, whose dollars are these anyway? It's the American people's dollars. This government takes dollars and then does stuff with it. We want to make sure that parents can use their dollars the way that they think would be the best for their kids. We're returning more families' money to them so that they have greater flexibility to provide the best possible education for their kids. That is the goal of this amendment, and with that, I would reserve.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is a fairly simple amendment. It would just sabotage public education by transferring money in the public school system to the private school system. It would open up funds to children in public schools to those already in private school. They would get that a lot of money would be diverted that way, and it includes homeschooling. And who's going to audit the money that the parents get for homeschooling their children? Furthermore, how are you going to figure out how much money each child gets? Because Title I is based on a formula that involves poverty. If it is a low-income child, will they get more money to go to a private school than a higher-income person who the formula did not recognize as far as getting money? Those are just complications, but basically it's a private school voucher program where those already in private school can take public money out of the public system and reduce the amount of money available for public schools. I reserve the balance of my time.
Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I would just add a couple of responses to my friend, the gentleman from Virginia. Both of us are graduates of the University of Virginia, and I'm an extraordinary proud graduate of Virginia, where Thomas Jefferson, frankly, helped frame the public diffusion of knowledge, as the gentleman knows, and trying to set up a structure for public schools to be able to be a broader access for more Americans and give them the ability and the benefits of public education. I was public school educated K through law school. So was my wife, raised by a single mom, who went to the Texas A&M University and the University of Texas School of Law, where we met. I'm a big proponent of the public education system, but I am a bigger proponent of empowering parents. I'm a bigger proponent of being able to have checks and balances within the education system and allowing parents the ability to take care of their kids. Right? That's what this is about. When we talk about homeschooling, the purpose here is you've got parents who are left on the outside looking in while the public school systems abandoned them during the pandemic. And they had to go do something about it. And they're abandoning them now by not providing them the proficiency of education, as I just talked about in Baltimore and Chicago and in schools across the country. To say that we should restrict that from the parents being able to use those dollars in private schools, say that to the hardworking parent today, scraping by to send $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to a Catholic school because that parent wants the best education for their child. I say, let's actually empower parents. That's what this whole debate is about this week. That's why I offered this amendment, and I would reserve.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is a well-worn debate. I think people are familiar with what happens when you take public school money and put it into private schools, and I thank the gentleman for making the amendment as simple and straightforward as he has. This would decimate rural districts where there are few school options. People in rural districts would take money out of the rural community, plop it into urban areas. And I'd just like to know how much money a family could get if they took 2 children out of public school and just kept them at home under the guise of homeschooling. How much money could they get from the public school system to do that? I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
My time is limited, and the gentleman has the right to close this out. I would just say that we should have a robust debate about that. This is very limited, as the gentleman pointed out. It's Title I money under the ESEAA, so this would be limited in the total economic impact, and I think it's just a nice way to be able to give some dollars to parents to be able to go take care of their children, and I would yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, we don't know how much money a family could get if they're financially strapped, how much money they can get for pulling their children out of public schools and using the money for the allowable uses, which includes extracurricular activities. That could be a vacation to Disneyland. I don't know what they could use the money for, but they could significantly benefit financially by taking their children out of school. Rural districts will benefit. Those already in private school will benefit. And the ones that will be disadvantaged will be the school systems that are struggling to provide an education for low-income students today. I would hope we would defeat the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The gentleman, for what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
I would ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 20, printed in the House Report 118-12. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 20, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I thank the gentlelady from North Carolina for her efforts this week and her efforts and devotion to education generally in her career. Look, I'm offering this amendment because I believe that we should be empowering states and local schools and communities to be able to take care of our kids. I don't think the federal government has any business in this area for the most part. I don't believe the Department of Education should exist in the first place. When I look at Article 1, Section 8, I don't see anything about education. And so from my standpoint, and I believe it's a sentiment shared by many on my side of the aisle, and I've heard many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle bemoaning federal intervention this week. So I think let's just call the question then. If we have concerns about federal intervention into state affairs, then let's take the dollars and let's block grant them back to the states. Now, my friend Mr. Massey has a sense of Congress that we should abolish the Department of Education, which I fully support. But if we have true concerns here, to my Democratic colleagues who are concerned about, oh my gosh, heaven forbid, that we have parents be able to see what's in the curriculum. This is too much federal intervention. Well, how about we look at the overall federal intervention in general, and let's block grant those dollars to states and allow state governments, local communities, local school boards, and parents to make all the decisions. We'll just take care of your problem right now. And with that, I would reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman for Virginia seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this would eliminate all of the targeted resources under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, consolidated into one view. If you just take Title I, that money is targeted towards low-income areas. There are targets to rural areas, to migrants. Generally speaking, the mainstream education can be well done with the local and state funding, but there are areas where there are troubles. English is a second language, migrants, low income, where the federal government comes in and targets money because, generally speaking, within the political give and take, these are the ones that are left out. Those who are generally left out and supported by ESEA are the exact ones that would be disadvantaged under this. When you fund education with the real estate tax, as we do in the United States today, you almost guarantee inequity in education because the more wealthy areas can do better. And ESEA, primarily under Title I, goes into areas that are low income and have less resources, and they can get help from the federal government. That would be decimated by this amendment. I would hope we would defeat it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
At this time, I would like to yield to my friend, the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Burkeen.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Imagine a world where parents, school board members, and teachers were really running the show in the classroom, not bureaucrats thousands of miles away. Imagine a world where parents didn't have to worry about a hypersexualized, woke culture when they send their most cherished individuals to the classroom, that what they've taught them at home, they are assured that what is taught in that school system is not going to counter that. We had such a world prior to 1979. It was a world that our founders foresaw. It's why they believed in the concept of laboratories of democracy, laboratories of experimentation, where across state lines you could learn from both success and failures. It is why in the 18 enumerated powers of Article I, Section 8, you do not find the Department of Education. It's why the 10th Amendment says all powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. It's why Thomas Jefferson said in order for the federal government to be involved in education, you'd have to have a constitutional amendment. And again, prior to 1979, we had such a world. The creation of the Department of Education has only allowed a reduction in educational attainment. I'll end with this. James Madison made this statement. He said, imagine a world where we actually ascribe to the enumerated powers. I'm paraphrasing. He said, if Congress can apply this, if they can take the care of religion, if they can do this, go outside the 18 enumerated powers, they can take care of religion into their own hands, they can establish teachers in every county, every state, and every parish, pay them out of the public treasury. They can take into their own hands the education of children, establishing in like manner schools throughout the Union. They may assume the provision for the poor. They may undertake the regulation of all roads other than post office roads. In short, everything from the highest object of state legislation down to the most minute object of police would be thrown to the power of Congress. James Madison foresaw this. In 1792, he stood on this floor and talked about it. We need to return to the brilliance of our
Gentleman's time
founders.
has expired. Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank the Speaker. I thank my friend from Oklahoma for support of the amendment. I agree with every word that he just shared with the body. And I would just note, again, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been raising a lot of concerns that my side of the aisle is inserting the federal government into the business of the states and localities. Look, I will acknowledge I don't love going down this road. I don't think we should have to. I think this should all be left to the states. And if the folks in California, or the folks in New York, or the folks in some state want to put this garbage in front of their kids, then let them hash that out. But as long as we're going to have the federal government inserting itself, which this body, led predominantly by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, have been pushing now for years, at a bare minimum, shouldn't we ensure that parents have the ability to see what's in the curriculum? Parents know what books are in the library. That's the debate this week. What we're trying to do with this amendment is essentially call the bluff of my Democratic colleagues. Put your money where your mouth is. If you don't like the fact that the federal government is involved in education, welcome to the party. Let's give the money right back to the states and local governments where they can do what's best for the people in their states and local communities. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself the balance of the time. Mr. Chairman, this would concentrate funding where there are high concentration of students, not where there is a high concentration of poverty, as the present formula gives. It will remove targeted money for teachers, and incredibly, it would remove targeted funding for family engagement. I thought that's why we were here. This amendment would remove money targeted for family engagement. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. And for what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
I would request the yeas and nays.
Does the gentleman request a recorded
Request
vote?
a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 21, printed in House Report 118-12. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 21, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Smith of New Jersey.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me thank Chairwoman Virginia Fox for the extraordinary job she is doing on this important parental rights legislation, H.R. 5. I do want to thank my friend from Virginia. The debate has been civil. It has been disciplined. And obviously, we have a major fundamental difference, but there's respect on both sides. So thank you, Chairwoman Fox, for your leadership. Mr. Chairman, last month, Adriana Olivia Kutch, a student at Central Regional High School in my congressional district, tragically took her own life just days after a group of students violently attacked her in the school hallway and then shared the video of the horrific assault online. Adriana's family told the Asbury Park Press that, quote, she took her own life after being threatened online, attacked on school grounds, and then later harassed when video of the attack was spread via social media. My amendment today, Mr. Chairman, would add to the bill's disclosure requirement of violent incidences a provision that schools notify parents of whether recordings exist of such violence. The amendment recognizes that bullying and violence are often compounded and the victim further traumatized, further humiliated, and further mocked when the crime is videotaped and shared on social media. Once informed, the parents are empowered to hopefully better able to shield, to better comfort, and to protect their child. This amendment is a step in the right direction of what must be a full-court press to tackle online bullying. Many school districts, as my colleagues already know, do have harassment, intimidation, and bully, or HIB policies, which should include parental notification of online bullying occurrences. What happened in the Central Regional High School must never happen again. There must be no higher priority for us than school safety and protecting every student from violence. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman, with what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the underlying bill has a lot of ambiguity about things like what is an injury, what is violent activity, does it have to be an injury? If there has to be an injury, then a shooting where the bullet misses and there's no injury would not be covered, but somebody pushes somebody and they slip and get a bloody nose, that would be an injury. And that would be violent activity, but it's very poorly defined. The second is aware of a video recording. Does that include fellow students' cell phones and other things? Does it include a monitoring, the school system monitoring? And then it doesn't say anything about numerous rights and laws, rights of privacy, and what to do after you find out. What can you do about it? That's a little unclear. It doesn't say what rights you have to the video or anything like that. I think that causes more questions than answers, and I would hope we'd defeat the amendment.
Does the gentleman reserve?
I reserve.
Gentleman from
Mr.
Virginia
Chairman, after
reserves.
the
The gentleman from New
terrible-
Jersey is recognized.
After the terrible incident and the loss of this young woman, there were meetings with the school board, and the number of students who came forward who talked about the bullying and the videotaping of bullying that happens and how threatened they feel. It seems to me, out of an abundance of caution and respect and concern for the well-being of these individuals, these young people, having the school leaders step up and say, we know of a video recording, we've got to make sure the parents know. That young woman, in this case, sitting in her room, watching the video over and over again, and all the extreme mockings that she endured, that may have driven her to suicide. We don't know absolutely, but we do know that it has a very debilitating impact on a young person to see all of that. And I watched the video, Mr. Chairman, and I was moved to see her on the ground being kicked and punched. And again, there was a video of this. So many of the parents have no idea. They don't monitor social media necessarily. Why not have the school leaders make sure that that is transferred over to the parents so they can step in and love their child and try to protect their child from all the psychological and other harms that accrue from that video. So this is a simple amendment, and I would hope that my colleagues would vote for it. Yield back.
The gentleman from New Jersey yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Virginia yields. Question on the amendment is offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 22, printed in the House Report 118-12. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 22, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Ms. Tenney of New York.
Pursuant to House Resolution 241, the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Tenney, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the underlying bill and my amendment to the Parents' Bill of Rights. The amendment would require public schools to inform parents on decisions to terminate college credit courses, including dual enrollments and advanced placement courses. As the cost of colleges and universities continues to skyrocket, many students depend on these highly affordable high school credit courses. It's an essential tool for students to reduce their time and their total cost in attending college. And case in point, I graduated from college in 1983, and the total tuition for to attend Colgate University was $12,000. Today, it's nearly $80,000 for room and board and tuition. So this is a way to try to ameliorate that problem with many students who want to seek college admission and college credit. However, Unfortunately, the woke radical left-wing school administrators in states such as New York are working to terminate gifted and talented programs, including the college credit courses, in their misguided attempt to further their far-left social equity agenda. These administrators don't actually want equal opportunity, but to tear down our top-performing students to promote their diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. This is simply wrong. I've heard from parents across my district who've actually moved out of their own homes to find schools where their children can attend that have these college credit courses offered. Parents should have the right to know if these important programs are terminated and if they are being eliminated in the name of equity. We should be forming education policy that allows children to flourish and not one that is preoccupied with sabotaging those children who choose to succeed academically. At the end of the day, sunlight is often the best disinfectant, and I hope the transparency offered by this amendment and ends this harmful attempt at the far left's social engineering. I'm grateful to the chair, Dr. Fox, for her support of my amendment, and I encourage all of my colleagues to support this common sense amendment that is much needed today for our parents to have equal rights. Thanks so much. I yield back.
The gentleman from Virginia, for what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, this is just another unfunded mandate placed on the school systems that they have to do as a condition for receiving Title I funds. And then you look at what is involved if a class is eliminated because there's no teacher for that class or no student interest. For example, if no one signs up for a particular foreign language, and so the course is dropped, we have to now notify all of the parents as a condition of getting Title I funds. If a teacher, the only teacher who taught that language, if she or he decides to retire and that course is not taught, you have to notify everyone as a condition of getting Title I funds. This amendment does nothing to improve parental engagement. It just adds to the another federal law, along with the bathroom bills that we've heard, attacks on LGBTQ individuals, attacks on trans youth. Now we have another report that has to be made. I would hope we'd defeat the amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Virginia reserves. Without objection, the gentlewoman from New York can reclaim her time.
Thank you. I yield my time to the Majority Leader, Mr. Scalise. 1 minute.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, and thank the gentlelady from New York for yielding and for her amendment to such an important bill. The Parents' Bill of Rights is a basic concept, but it's a powerful statement that says we stand with parents and children in the ability for them to have a say in their kids' education. You would think, who would be against this? Why do we need a law to do what everybody should think is the right thing to do? Unfortunately, what we've seen through this debate is that the left is scared to death of parents having more of a say in their kids' education. Union bosses are scared to death of parents having a say in their kids' education. And then it begs the question, why would they be so afraid of parents wanting to see the curriculum that their kids are experiencing when they go to school? Well, I think we all saw why their concern is so vocal. This all happened during COVID. As we went from in-classroom learning to virtual learning, millions of parents actually got a glimpse into what was going on in the classrooms of their kids. Now, I'm sure most of those parents thought they were just going to be watching their kids learn how to read, how to write, how to break down sentence structures, how to learn math. And some of that was going on, But what alarmed parents are all the other things that had absolutely nothing to do with their kids having an opportunity to achieve the American dream. And in fact, some of the things that were going on undermined the basic values that those parents are teaching their kids at home. Things that had nothing to do with helping those kids learn and be prepared for better opportunities in the future. And they started asking questions. And they were right to ask those questions, except the Biden administration got concerned because the union bosses didn't want those parents to see what was going on. You had the Justice Department trying to tag parents as domestic terrorists for showing up at a school board meeting, for God's sake, because they cared about what was happening in their kids' schools. It shouldn't have taken an act of Congress to give parents that right. But if it does, I am proud to stand with the parents and the kids against the union bosses who don't want the parents to have that right to care about their kids' education. For God's sake, we shouldn't have to be here doing this. The union shouldn't be fighting this every step of the way. But it really shows you what they care about if they don't want parents to have these rights. And so thank goodness we have Virginia Fox's committee, Julia Letlow's bill, members of Congress coming together and saying the parents ought to have that ability. Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter what your political viewpoint is, because anybody in this country, part of the American dream is being able to pass on better opportunity to your kids than what you had. And the best way to do that, the greatest equalizer, is education. And if you've got to be concerned about what's happening in your kid's classroom, and the school doesn't want you to see what's happening in your kid's classroom, you really ought to be alarmed. But every parent ought to have that right. Because when kids are sent to school, they should be learning how to get more opportunity, how to advance and have more success than we had. And if they're being taught things that undermine that, every parent ought to be able to know about that. And under this bill, they finally will. This is a power that every parent should already have, but we saw during COVID. Some parents had that ability, but unfortunately, many, many parents were denied that ability to just have basic understanding of what was happening in their kids' classrooms. Millions of kids were denied education, which ultimately means those millions of kids are denied opportunity. No one should stand for that. So on this day and on every day, I am proud to stand with the parents and the kids if anybody gets in their way, especially union bosses who don't want the parents to be able to have that opportunity to stand up for their kids. Let's stand with the parents and the kids. Let's pass this bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
I reserve. Do you have anything else? No, I yield my time.
The gentlewoman from New York yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself the balance of the time. We've heard a lot about people who can't speak at school board meetings because they're being arrested. I'll reiterate, the only ones being arrested at school board meetings are those the police believe are committing crimes. I'd point out that this is another federal law, along with the bathroom bill that's in the bill, the attacks on LGBTQ and trans youth. But there's nothing in this amendment to increase parental say over which courses are being offered. Some courses are deleted, like African American Studies and AP African American Studies in Florida. But there's no money for new courses. There's no money for school construction in this legislation. There's no after-school program funding. There's no money for teacher salaries. There's no money for counselors or psychologists. It's just a list of things that most parents can do anyway. No money for actual parental involvement. Those amendments were defeated. And so I would hope that this additional requirement as a condition of receiving Title I funding not be adopted, that the entire bill be defeated. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from New York. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 10 by Mr. Green of Tennessee. Amendment number 13 by Ms. Jacobs of California. Amendment number 15 by Mr. Massey of Kentucky. Amendment number 17 by Mr. McCormick of Georgia. Amendment number 19 by Mr. Roy of Texas. Amendment number 20 by Mr. Roy of Texas. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment number 10. Not in order. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 10, printed in the House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Green, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 10, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Green of Tennessee.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 416.
Mr. Curtis votes aye. Sometimes it changes. Mr. Griffith votes aye. Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Mr. Payne votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 420, the nays are 5. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 13, printed in the House Report 118-12, offered by the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Jacobs, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 13, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Ms. Jacobs of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and then be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. 2. On this vote, the yeas are 203, the nays are 217. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 15, printed in the House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massey, on which further proceedings were postponed and in which the ayes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 15, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Massey of Kentucky.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. Seconds. All members voted. Is there any member who wishes to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 161, the nays are 265. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 17, printed in House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. McCormick, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 17, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. McCormick of Georgia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by an electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. 2 minutes. Seconds. Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 107, the nays are 317. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 19, printed in the House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 19, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. 2 minutes.
30 seconds. Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? On this vote, the yeas are 113, the nays are 311. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 20, printed in the House Report 118-12, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 20, printed in House Report number 118-12, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request of a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote. Seconds. Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote?
On this vote, the yeas are 83, the noes are 331. The amendment is not agreed to. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute, as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Speaker, the Committee of the whole House on the State of the Union has under consideration H.R. 5 and pursuant to House Resolution 241. I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
the chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 5 and, pursuant to House Resolution 241, reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on the engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to ensure the rights of parents are honored and protected in the nation's public schools.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mrs. Hayes of Connecticut moves to recommit the bill H.R. 5 to the Committee on Education and the Workforce.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Connecticut is recognized.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Those in favoring a vote of the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this is a 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit, followed by a 5-minute vote on the passage of the bill if ordered, and the motion to suspend the rules and agree to the House Concurrent Resolution 25. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 203, the nays are 218. The motion is not adopted. The question is on the passage of the final bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed and without objection. The House will be in order. The gentlewoman from North Carolina. A recorded vote has been requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 212. On this vote, the yeas are 213, the nays are 208. With that, the bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile, to suspend the rules and agree to H. Con Res 25, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
House Concurrent Resolution 25, concurrent resolution authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for a ceremony as part of the commemoration of the Days of Remembrance of the Victims of the Holocaust.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to the H. Con Res? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 405, the nays are 0. The ayes have it. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The concurrent resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet on Monday next, when it shall convene at noon for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection, so ordered. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, may I ask that the House be in order?
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in recognition of International Women's Month and the important protection given to women and girls under Title IX. As a father of 3 young and wonderful girls, all of whom play sports, I understand the importance of celebrating female sports and the incredible opportunities and protections under Title IX. Unfortunately, some people want to erode these important protections by allowing biological men to compete alongside and against women and girls. And a young woman having to compete against a biological young man who is often built different and bigger just isn't fair. It deprives young women of a fair sense of competition. It deprives them of the confidence that comes from practicing and winning. Mr. Speaker, Congress must act to protect our daughters, to give them a fair chance to compete, and to uphold the protections granted to them by Title IX. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. I rise today to honor the service of a beloved member of the Springfield Police Department and who recently passed, K-9 Thor. Thor worked second watch for 8 years as a dual-purpose police K-9 until his retirement in 2019. Trained in apprehending criminals and searching for evidence in narcotics, he played an important role in keeping our community safe. During his career, Thor won numerous awards at the United States Police Canine Association Region 16 trials, including 4 perfect scores in suspect search and evidence search. Distinctions that my little 20-pound Lulu just might not have cut it. When Thor wasn't fighting crime, his favorite activity was chasing tennis balls at home and spending time with his family. As we reflect on Thor's service to the Springfield community, we are reminded of the sacrifices that our law enforcement officers and their K-9 partners make every day to keep us safe. Thank you, Thor, and thank you to all of the first responders in the Illinois' 13th Congressional District for your dedication to service. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I ask to address the House for 1 minute. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize a fallen hero from Rockland County. 2 years ago yesterday, Jared Lloyd went to the Columbian Engine Company No. 1 firehouse like he had hundreds of times before to help keep our community safe. He did not know that it would be his last call when he and his company were called to the Evergreen Court Adult Home in Spring Valley to combat a fire that started, putting the lives of hundreds of elderly residents at risk. He, along with hundreds of other first responders, descended on the scene, running headlong into the building that was becoming engulfed with flames. Together, they saved over 100 lives that day, a heroic feat. Tragically, Jared lost his life in this effort, which serves as a stark reminder of the incredible bravery shown by all of our first responders in the Hudson Valley and across our nation, but especially our volunteer firefighters. Thank you, Jared. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and your example. I know all of Rockland mourns you today and every day, and we will always be there to support your family, including your two incredible sons. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, recently I traveled to 6 counties in my district and looked at different aspects of education, ranging from Title I funds, STEM, school nutrition, physical education, to providing safe learning environments. Mr. Speaker, after speaking with many students, I learned that they're seeking new opportunities to live their dreams, and they tend to respond best to caring adults such as parents, guardians, teachers, coaches, custodians, and even bus drivers. During my visits, I also was honored to serve as a teacher assistant at Central Elementary in Northampton County. Miss Leanna Cahoon, also known by our students as Miss C, stayed busy as ever, grading tests, helping students with math, spelling, and assisting classrooms when needed. We must applaud not only Miss C, but all teacher assistants and educators. Mr. Speaker, education is a lifeline for the future, and we must provide the resources for our students to succeed. Because, after all, our young minds will be the ones who will transform not only Eastern North Carolina, but America forever. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Ensuring that all students are fed in a nutritious and affordable manner. I'm proud to have introduced H.R. 1168, the School Lunch Affordability Act of 2023. Every year, schools are forced to raise their school lunch prices to comply with a paid lunch equity program set by the Richard B. Russell National School Lunch Act. This arbitrary price increase, mandated miles away by Congress, has no impact on nutritional content and puts unnecessary pressure on hardworking American families and ultimately leads to more hungry students. This legislation would amend the regulation to return local control to schools. Protecting the health and nutrition of our youth is a critical aspect of a strong educational system, and it's completely un-American to subject our local schools to the burdensome federal regulations. Schools should be able to make these decisions for themselves, not the bureaucrats in Washington. This legislation grants them this ability at the local level. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to H.R. 5, a partisan effort to bring culture wars into our nation's classroom. Listen, my grandfather had a way of saying no to me as a kid. He would hold up his hand and he would say, when red hair grows right here in the palm of his hand. That was his way of saying no. And it's the same with this legislation in the Senate, which will go nowhere in the Senate. It opens the door to more book bans at our local school libraries by requiring schools to report each and every book in their inventory. Let's be clear. Recent attempts to restrict access to books are an attack on the fundamental values of our democracy. Banning books is not only a violation of our First Amendment rights, but it also undermines our children's education and intellectual growth. As a father of two, I'm disappointed by these partisan attempts to restrict access to books that could inspire and educate our children. We should be working together to build a better future for our kids instead of engaging in more partisan political games. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I'd like to speak for a minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
I'd like to call attention to a disturbing trend that's going on in our colleges and universities. We all know, or at least anybody on this side of the aisle, talking to college students who feel there's certain things they just can't say. It's going to cost them a grade. When you're dealing with young professors, it's going to cost them tenure. And that is the intolerance for conservative ideas or religious ideas in America's universities. Lately, we've had universities say they're not going to deal with standardized testing anymore, the SAT, that sort of thing. It is another way, and people have to remember this, it's fun not to take a test, but it's another way to go after people who are at all conservative. Right now, you can be as religious as you want, you can be as Republican as you want, you can have a lifestyle that includes, for example, hunting, and if you get a good SAT score, they've got to let you in even though they don't want to, or they will let you in even though they don't want to. As we get rid of SAT scores, it opens things more to subjective determinations. And the liberals who run our universities are going to use those subjective determinations to keep your conservatives out of the important universities in this country. Thank you.
For what purposes does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House floor for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today to honor the life of a West Michigan leader, advocate, former colleague, and friend. Taken from us too soon, she will go down in history as a trailblazing young woman. Ava Alvarez was the daughter of migrant farm workers, one of 7 children who worked her way through college and her master's degree. She was the public policy coordinator for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. I had the joy of working with Ava to help support hardworking migrant farm workers throughout Michigan, and together we partnered to shine a light on injustice, uplift those often pushed aside in society, and make our community a little more just, fair, and humane. In addition to her work on policy, she co-founded Empowering Latina Leaders and Advocates for Success, AYAS, the first professional network in Southwest Michigan for Latina women. In all she did, Ava was bringing others up around her. She often reminded us we did not get here alone. Help pave the way for others. With a smile that could light up a room, an infectious laugh, and a quick-witted sense of humor, Ava pressed on through difficult work. She carried a vision of communities and systems that treat every individual with dignity and respect, regardless of who they were, where they came from, their skin color, or the language that they spoke. Every day, she worked to bring Michigan a little bit closer to that vision, practicing welcome everywhere she went. Her work will leave a legacy of justice and compassion, her friendship, memories of joy and light. I continue my work to make West Michigan a better place because of her. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Hampshire seek recognition?
I rise to ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as co-chair of the Bipartisan Ski and Snowboard Caucus to recognize the incredible achievements of New Hampshire's own Michaela Schifrin, the most decorated skier of all time. On March 11, 2023, during Women's History Month, Michaela broke the record for the most World Cup alpine wins by any skier, male or female, earning 87 championship wins and securing her place in history. Shortly after, she won another title, breaking her own record and making history again. I love having a woman be the most decorated skier in the world. From her earliest days when I met her at the Dartmouth Skiway and first watched her race with her late father, my friend Jeff, Michaela has taken the world by storm. Her record-breaking win and dedication to the sport will inspire women and girls across the country and around the world. Thank you, Michaela, for inspiring us to be nice, think first, and have fun. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Today I rise to recognize a very special group from Western Illinois, the Moline High School boys basketball team. The Maroons recently made history, bringing home the school's first ever state championship win. Under head coach Sean Taylor, the Maroons demonstrated intense perseverance and skill, securing a 59-42 victory after an impressive 35-win season. I know this group's hard work and determination are a source of pride for the entire Moline community and for the state of Illinois. And it's my honor to recognize them here on the floor of the House of Representatives today. This was their first state championship, and I have no doubt it will not be their last. Go Maroons! And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The number one cause of death for children in America is gun violence. Yet instead of making our schools safer and creating environments for children to thrive, House Republicans are focusing their attention on harmful political rhetoric. Today's passage of H.R. 5 politicizes classrooms and facilities, the censorship of American stories, American experiences, and factual American history, to unreasonably limit the scope of our children's knowledge and to dilute their critical thinking abilities is an immense disservice to America's children and to our country's future. Instead of solving real problems, House Republicans are simply trying to distract the American people with divisive political stunts and empty culture wars. I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to work with House Democrats to pass legislation that will actually help America's children, not exploit them to further divide Americans for political gain. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Illinois seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to uplift our student veterans and call attention to a great need. Many of our veterans go on to use their GI Bill benefits to go to school or to seek training. That's part of our commitment to veterans. Sadly, those GI Bill benefits can be seen as money targets by predatory institutions. If a school commits an act of fraud, there is no across-the-board mechanism in place for student veterans to restore their GI Bill benefits. But we can change that, which is exactly what my bill, House Resolution 1767, the Student Veterans Benefit Restoration Act, will do. I am honored to introduce my first piece of legislation and to do so with the support of my ranking member on the Veteran Affairs Subcommittee, Congressman Mike Levin. It has taken many people's dedicated advocacy over many years to get us here, and it's a critical opportunity to better deliver on our commitment to our veterans, and I welcome all my colleagues to join me. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to attack the bill, H.R. 5, because it attacks education. Republicans call it the Parents' Bill of Rights Act. In reality, it should be called the Politics Over Parents Act. H.R. 5 would take vital resources away from local schools and educators. It would allow schools to be centers of indoctrination and not education. And it would allow communities to ban books if they don't like them. The Founding Fathers knew that public education was vital to an educated populace and proper self-government. And it has helped millions of Americans rise out of poverty. And it has helped millions of Americans start businesses and pursue the American dream. Yet Republicans continue their assault on public education at every opportunity. I'm proud to be part of a party that supports the American dream for all Americans and not one that wants to reject it. Thank goodness for the United States Senate. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition? For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I rise to congratulate the John R. Buchtel boys basketball team from Ohio's 13th Congressional District for winning their first state title in the program's history. This past weekend, the Buchtel Griffins defeated Lutheran West 51-49 in a dramatic Division II title game that went down to the buzzer. As someone who grew up on the west side of Akron, where Buchtel is located, this title means so much to our community. Buchtel is the first Akron Public Schools team to win a state boys basketball championship since 1986. The entire 1040 Nation is so proud of these student athletes for their incredible win and their excellence, determination, and work ethic both on and off the court. I also want to congratulate head coach Rayshawn Dent, the staff, trainers, parents, and cheerleaders that all supported this team in their journey to the state championship. Ohio's 13th Congressional District is truly the birthplace of champions, and Buchtel's win cements our status. Congratulations once more to the Ohio 13 Champion of the Week, the Mighty Griffins, for bringing home the 2023 Division II title back to Akron. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Bob Rhoda, who recently retired after 40 years of public service here in the House as enrolling clerk. Bob began his service to the House as a United States Capitol Police officer before joining the clerk's office in 1987. His job as enrolling clerk, Bob oversaw a team of highly skilled professionals responsible for preparing House-passed legislation throughout the stages of the process and all the way to its presentation to the President for signature. Bob produced high-quality work every single day. As enrolling clerk, it was his duty to make certain that bills such as the National Defense Authorization Act, normally over 4,000 pages long, had all of the amendments inserted in the correct places, and the graphs and charts were accurate, no small task. Bob's breadth of expertise extended to his encyclopedic knowledge of House procedures. He could always be counted on to respond to all questions in a timely and accurate way. Whether he was walking someone through the minutia of the legislative process or how to even fix a problem at your home or with your car, Bob was and is an integral part of the team that supports our legislative work. He looks forward to retirement, filled with spending time with his wife, children, and grandchildren. I wish Bob and his family many years of a happy, healthy, and well-earned reputation. Congratulations, Bob.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today angered and upset over H.R. 5, an attempt to make Black history not American history. I have listened to my Republican colleagues suggest how this bill empowers parents. I'm a grandparent. Not true. And how it protects our children. So what? Protect our children from reading about Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr. Protect our children from reading about Barack Obama, the first Black president, Kamala Harris, the first Black vice president, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first justice in this country. Protect them from the Tuskegee Airmen who were wingmen to save the lives of white pilots. Protect our children from what? American history, Black history are the same. To protect them from the research that Kizzy Corbett did on COVID-19. To protect them from all the inventions that we all benefit from. Mr. Speaker, this is not right. It does not protect our children. What are Republicans afraid of? I yield back my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. I rise today to commemorate the recent one-year anniversary of the Dr. Lorna Breen Healthcare Provider Protection Act becoming law. Dr. Lorna Breen was an emergency room physician who tragically died by suicide after enduring the trauma and burnout of the COVID-19 front lines in New York City. She was, to put it simply, a hero. And she is one of countless healthcare heroes who face mental health crises and a suicide rate twice that of the public due to their demanding, all-consuming work. The Dr. Lorna Breen law carries on her legacy, investing in support for healthcare workers' mental health needs. I pushed hard to pass this bill, and now I'm pushing for its grant programs to receive full funding through fiscal year 2024, because the heroes who take care of us deserve to be taken care of too. Our work to bring mental health out of the shadows is far from over. That work means meeting the mental health crisis among health professionals with the resources it demands. It means fully funding the programs within the Dr. Lorna Breen law. Thank you to the Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation for your continued leadership, shedding light on this crisis. I remain by your side in honor of Dr. Breen and all healthcare heroes whose mental health needs devastatingly went unmet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, in this magnificent chamber, we have honored presidents and other heads of state. We've honored titans of business and industry, science and medicine, the arts and entertainment, academia and sports. Young and old, we have welcomed the best and brightest America has to offer. And we've been the envy of the world when it comes to personal achievement. Mr. Speaker, that's why I'm here today, to recognize and honor an individual with remarkable accomplishment. His name is Bruce Rollinson. He's affectionately known as Rollo. For the past 34 years, he has been the head football coach of one of America's truly elite high school football teams, the modern-day Monarchs of Santa Ana, California. Rollo announced some weeks ago that he was going to retire from coaching. Now, as a fan of high school athletics, I could not let the moment pass without recognizing this legend in coaching. I first got to know Rollo back in 2019 when he brought his football team to the nation's capital for a game against one of this area's top teams. I was asked by a parent of one of his players to escort the team through the United States Capitol. Little did I know that team happened to be the nation's top-ranked high school football team and was led by a young quarterback who was on his way to glory. That quarterback was a kid named Bryce Young, who that very week, had decommitted from the University of Southern California and announced to the world that he was going to become a member of the Crimson Tide at Alabama. And as you know, this young man became the second such player under Coach Rollinson to win the coveted Heisman Trophy. The tour became one of my favorite memories of my service in Congress. The relationship I forged with Rollo and his staff and players has been life-enhancing for me. While most who follow Mater Dei and Coach Rollinson are well aware of the records, well aware of the championships, and the elite style of football they represent, I became fascinated with Bruce, the man, not just the coach, and his legacy of building young men of character and positioning them for success. Football was his method. Excellence was always the goal. And Mr. Speaker, the results speak for themselves. Today, Mr. Speaker, we're going to highlight a lot of Rollo's credentials. It is fitting, in my judgment, to begin this tribute with a colleague of mine who knows the Mater Dei success story better than anyone in this chamber and certainly anyone in Congress. He is Mike Gallagher. He is a Mater Dei alum, and he's here to share some personal insights into this man we honor today. And for as much time as he prefers to consume, I am pleased to recognize my friend from Wisconsin, Mike Gallagher.
Well, I thank the gentleman, and I rise as a proud Mater Dei graduate, a proud Mater Dei monarch, and I rise to honor a Rollinson, but probably not the one you are thinking of, Lori Rollinson, who was my AP U.S. history teacher and imbued in me a love of United States history, a fascination with our country's history and values, which the more I think about it and the more I look back on it, sent me on a path to not only further exploring those issues in college and in graduate school, but to serving my country in the United States Marine Corps and ultimately serving my country in the United States Congress. So among Coach Rollinson's many accolades, perhaps none is higher than he outkicked his coverage in terms of the woman that he married. And she had a profound impact on my life. And so thank you to Lori Rollinson, though we are here today to recognize Coach and Bruce Rollinson. The other reason I just want to mention the true power in the Rollinson house is because, and this is a bit of a shameful confession, I was a nerd in high school. I spent more time studying for Mrs. Rollinson's class than I did pursuing athletic excellence. I was not a member of the Mater Dei football team. I went to many a game and cheered on from afar, but in fact, I actually played flag football with the other Heisman Trophy winner that Coach Rollinson coached, Matt Leinart, in junior high. And I was so bad, I dropped every pass that Matt Leinart threw to me. So I was too intimidated to play for Rollo. But even if you weren't on the team, any student at Mater Dei was profoundly impacted by Coach Rollinson. There was nothing better at Mater Dei than a pep rally before a big game in which Coach Rollinson would come out there with his raspy voice and fire up the entire student body. I've been to 8th and I ceremonies in the Marine Corps. I've been to all sorts of fancy state visits. There is nothing with more energy and more excitement than a Mater Dei pep rally where Coach Rollinson is talking to the student body. Because the thing that Coach Rollinson did was not talk about the X's and O's of football. That would have gone way over my head. I would have been immediately stuffed myself back into a locker if that was the topic of conversation. He connected the playing of football to the pursuit of excellence and what we were all there to do, which was to honor God. Part of the Mater Dei mission, I've always felt in the last, since I started to learn a bit more about the combination of athletic excellence and academic excellence and leadership, I found that there are a lot of similarities between modern day's core values and the core values of the United States Marine Corps. We say honor, courage, commitment in the United States Marine Corps. They say honor, glory, and love in modern day. And I found myself thinking a lot about those core values. Honor. What does it mean to pursue honor on a football field? I would argue that there is honor in simply doing your job well, regardless of what position you play. And as Coach Rollinson famously says, you put in the effort, God controls the outcome. There is honor in putting in the effort on the field in order to do your absolute best. And that culture of honor and excellence permeated modern day, and it was a direct result of Coach Rollinson's leadership. We honor God simply by doing our job well. Whether you're a coach, whether you're a player, whether you're a United States congressman, whether you're a president, whether you're anybody pursuing honorable work. In the Marine Corps, we talk about this as ductus exemplo. It's lead by example. Do your job well, and you can inspire others. Glory. Glory is obvious on a football field. I have colleagues who are national champions. Coach is a 4-time national champion. You've had your share of glory on the football field. You've also probably had your share of setbacks and heartbreak. But ultimately, you're not there to glorify yourself. You're not there to glorify even the program per se. It's all about glorifying God, glorifying that pursuit of excellence, and glorifying the community that you were an integral part of building at Mater Dei High School. Glory on the football field translated to a sense that we were all part of something greater than ourselves at Mater Dei. It was palpable as a student, and that's a direct result of your leadership, Coach Rollinson. Finally, love. I don't want to get all, we don't do a lot of trust falls and hugging here in the House Republican caucus, but, I think the reason that football is so compelling, even more so than any of the other sports, is this sense of sacrifice and genuine love for your teammates. More so than any other sport, I think it's a pure team sport. And that willingness to sacrifice for your teammates is the ultimate expression of love and leadership, I would argue. And Coach Rollinson, your ability to instill these values, those core values of honor, glory, and love into everything you did in leading the Mater Dei football team had a profound impact, not only on the lives of the players that played their hearts out for you, but on the lives of every single student that walked through the doors of Mater Dei High School. I still think about it to this day. And though I regret not being able to call myself a former player of yours, I feel that I owe you a significant debt of gratitude for setting that example of leadership that I got to witness at a very early age. And we can list all your titles, we can list your wins, we can list your national championships, we can list all the great players that you've coached. It's impossible to quantify the impact that you've had on tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives because of what you meant to Mater Dei High School. So thank you, Coach Rollinson, not only for everything you accomplished on the field, but for everything that you accomplished off the field. I stand in awe of it, and I'm reminded of the quote, let me paraphrase a little bit, that some men have to spend their whole lives wondering if they made a difference. You do not have to wonder about that, Coach Rollinson. You have made a profound difference on the lives of thousands of young men and women who attended Mater Dei High School. So thank you for your leadership. It's an honor to be here today. You've even inspired colleagues from other parts of the country to come here on the floor of the United States House of Representatives to honor your accomplishments. And with that, I yield to the gentleman.
Thank you, Mike. Back in October, I was invited by our current majority leader, then the Minority Whip to accompany him on a West Coast swing. And we landed in Santa Ana, California, about 2 hours ahead of a program that we were going to have. And I asked the whip at the time, what are we going to do for 2 hours? And I think the answer was, I don't know, we'll go find some coffee or we'll kill some time before our program begins at 5. And I said, well, I've got an idea. Why don't we Google how far Mater Dei High School is, and let's go over there and watch a high school football team play. They're going to practice here in a few minutes. And so he agreed to do that, and we did. And it was a remarkable visit. 5 members of Congress with a police escort pulling up to Mater Dei and getting to see this remarkable football team ready to practice. My colleague, Mr. Gallagher, talked about sacrifice. And this next gentleman is a living example of somebody who has endured personal sacrifice on behalf of something greater than himself, this country. So it is my honor and privilege to recognize the distinguished majority whip of the United States, or distinguished majority leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, my friend from Louisiana, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, but especially to my colleague from Arkansas. Thank you for having the idea to call Coach Rollo, as we call him, and say, can these members of Congress come on over and spend a few minutes to see what true excellence is all about? And that was the treat that we got to experience for that next hour and a half or so, to watch what so many young men through the years got to experience. You can only think of the joy and the treat it was for those students at Mater Dei High School who had the great fortune to play for Coach Bruce Rollinson over those years. Because we just saw it in a brief period of time, and since getting to know him over these last few months, to see what kind of leader of men Coach Rollo is. And we surely saw it in the eyes of those young high school students. Although I will say, when I was looking up to some of those 6-foot-plus linemen, many of them looked like they might have played for the New Orleans Saints. I would have encouraged a few of them to go and play for, I didn't want to get into trouble and encourage them to play for my alma mater of LSU, but they could have been playing in the NFL. And in fact, many have gone on to play at higher levels. This year, maybe the #1 pick in the NFL draft, Bryce Young, had the honor of playing for Coach Rollo, as did Matt Leinart, who tried to throw a pass to my colleague, Congressman Gallagher. But the treat was just watching the character of those young men at Mater Dei High School. That doesn't happen by accident. It comes through leadership. As Coach Rollo and I were talking about earlier, I'm sure when people look at his career, we didn't know at the time that he was going to retire when we met with him just a few months ago. At the time, his team was the #1 high school team in the country. It's not anything new to Coach Rollo. A lot of people would look at all of the accolades, for a state as large as California to win 8 state championships. 6 of those were deemed national titles, high school national champion. That doesn't just happen by itself. Sure, it takes great players, but to do it year in, year out, to build that record of excellence, it takes a special leader, a leader who touches the hearts of young men and shapes them. Because what I recognize the most, it wasn't about the size, the physical abilities of these high school players. It was their character. You could see it just as we were talking to them. All incredibly not only polite, respectful, they were eager to learn from Coach Rollo. They came to learn from him. And that's what a real leader is all about. As we talked about earlier, we had the opportunity to listen to Drew Brees a few days ago. And of course, I've known Drew for so many years.
as a fan of the New Orleans Saints and gotten to know him, and talk about a person of character who led us not only to a Super Bowl, but really he would probably tell you the NFL Man of the Year award, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award might be the accomplishment he appreciates the most because it really signifies what he did in communities. And one of the things he said to us the other day was talking about how young people, and he was talking about it in relation to his kids, they might not always listen to what you say, but they watch everything you do. And all of those young men got to watch Coach Rollo, watch his leadership. And that's what really lasts with them. Sure, the trophies, the championships, those are all things that you can put up on a plaque. You saw 2, 3 Heisman trophies in a box in that school. But it was really the character, the values that he stands for. And that old sports adage that game recognizes game. I have another great coach, high school coach in my state, Coach J.T. Curtis, John Curtis. Won state championships, multiple championships over the years, second winningest high school football coach in the country. Won this year's state championship in Louisiana. And I texted him and I said, I don't know if you know him, but I'm here with Coach Rollo at Mater Dei High School. And he texted me back and he says, I know Coach Rollo. We got to run into each other and he knew who you were and he had nothing but tremendous respect for you and what you've done. And when I saw him the night that he won the state championship a few weeks ago in Louisiana, I said, you know, Coach Rollo just announced that he's retiring, and he didn't know that yet. And he almost teared up because of the respect that he has for you. So as Congressman Gallagher said a little while ago, you know, while you've touched the hearts of so many at Mater Dei High School, your legend, your character, your values transcend and reach people all across this great country. And I appreciate that my colleague from Arkansas took the time to reach out and that we got to go and spend some time with you, because everybody who's gotten the opportunity to meet with you has come out a better person. Thank you for your years dedicated to young men. I know there's better things ahead of you in the future. This isn't the last chapter, but what a legacy you've left for so many. Congratulations to you, Coach, on your many years of service at Mater Dei. And I yield back to my colleague from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Another member of Congress on that trip to the West Coast was my friend from Texas, Pat Fallon. Pat played for Lou Holtz at Notre Dame, national championship when he was there. And I got to tell you, when we walked in the foyer of the gymnasium and saw the trophy case with 3 prominent Heisman trophies side by side, it made an impression on me, because you can walk into virtually any high school in America and not see one. But at Mater Dei, there are 3. And one of those in particular ended up moving on to the University of Notre Dame, where he won the Heisman Trophy in 1964. Here to share some of his insights as well, based on that trip, is my friend from Texas, Pat Fallon.
Thank you, Colonel. And I think it shouldn't be lost on anyone watching that you're talking about service and selflessness. And we have a colonel that dedicated his life to this country, both serving here on the House floor, but also in the United States military. And one of the greater Americans that you'll know from the 21st century, Steve Scalise. And then we have the coach, Coach Rollinson, and we also have Coach Hopkins and Coach Higgins as well, and they were great hosts, and they're also great men. You know, it's been said that football builds character. I disagree with that. Football reveals character. And having been a player, that Heisman Trophy was not mine. I didn't get any votes, nor did I get invited to the combines. But the experience that you have, and my greatest football memory is not winning a national championship at the University of Notre Dame. It's a game that we won in high school that we were supposed to lose by 40 points, and we won by 31. Literally. I had a coach, Mike Murgo. He had one eye distinctly bigger than the other. And he talked like this.
And he said, "Oh, you ain't cross-eyed. I just got one eye bigger than the other boys."
The reason why we beat a team that should have beat us by 40, it was about belief. Belief. And Coach, that's what you've instilled in thousands of young men, is belief. People will say that you were a great coach. Again, I'm going to take a little umbrage with that. You were a great teacher, a teacher of men. And football is unique, as Congressman Gallagher said, because it's not a contact sport. Basketball is a contact sport. Soccer is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. And it hurts. I got a couple of concussions at Notre Dame in practice, full disclosure. But what Coach Holtz, you remind me of Coach Holtz. You're cut from the same cloth. On our national championship rings, it says trust, love, commitment. Football is unique because you have 11 men out on that field. You have to trust each other because it's a collision could come your way. You have to trust. You have to love one another. And when I look up in the gallery and see so many people, you're not from Virginia or Maryland, you couldn't drive here. So many people flew across this country to honor you, to honor what you built. It's not the 300-plus wins and the dozens of, or the over a dozen national championship, state, national. It's the trust, love, and the commitment that you had for your family, for your community, and for those young men. And we are in the presence of a Hall of Famer and greatness. And it was a wonderful day to see you operating with that team. And what impressed me so much about those young men, not, by the way, only their height. I took a picture with the offensive lineman. I'm 6 feet tall, 230 pounds, and I look like a hobbit. I mean, my son was like, "Daddy, are you going to have second breakfast?" And he was looking for my hairy feet. But each one of those men, when we went and the colonel shared some words, and the then whip, now majority leader shared words, they were so impressive. They're the future of our country. And that gives me solace. What we're all here for, why we serve in this august chamber, is we want to ensure that America's best days have yet to be counted. And that's what you've done for your entire life. And I always wonder, we're all going to have a tombstone one day. What's it going to say on yours? It's not going to say that you had a big house, or she drove a fast car, or they had a pile of money. It's all about how we loved and who we loved. And you have made a tremendous impact. You are a great American. And the best compliment I can ever pay someone is the world is a better place because you're in it. Thank you, Coach, and God bless you.
Thanks, Pat. Yes, we have come a long way since the days when you played with leather helmets without face masks. There's little doubt that coaching a player that wins the Heisman Trophy is a distinction that few can claim. Rollo has coached two. The first was Matt Leinart, a 2001 graduate of Mater Dei, whose playing career at the University of Southern California earned him college football's highest honor. I spoke with Matt ahead of this tribute, and he asked me to include these words into the record in recognizing his former high school coach, Matt Leinart. As an athlete growing up, you have big dreams, and you can be only so lucky to have people that can help you reach those dreams. Coach Rollo had that impact in my life. He was not only a coach, but a mentor and a father figure. He had a tremendous impact on my life in only ways that he knows. This past year has been one of the best of my life because I got to watch my 16-year-old son play for Mater Dei and play for my coach. As I watched Cole throw his first varsity touchdown pass, he walked off and hugged Rollo on the sideline. It was a full circle moment for me that I'll always remember. Rollo is family and one of the greatest men I know. Thank you for teaching me the many life lessons that I've needed to grow into the man I am today. Love you, Coach. Matt Leinart. But there was a second Heisman Trophy winner to follow, and I spoke of him earlier. And I am pleased to recognize a colleague of mine in this bipartisan tribute to Bruce Rollinson. She represents the 37th District in California, Sydney Kamlager Dove. And she has some special words for the coach, and I believe some comments from his second Heisman Trophy winner. I yield to the gentlelady.
Rise as a mother of a Loyola Cub, a formidable rival to the modern day Monarchs. But I have the courage enough to say that Mater Dei is a world-class high school that prepares young men for the highest echelons of sports, academic, and life achievement. And they own that accolade in part to the legendary coach, Bruce Rollinson. Coach Rollo, as he is affectionately known, has been as committed to winning high school national championships as he has been to developing these students into productive young men. Some famous Monarchs heralding from this fine school include USC's, my alma mater, Matt Leinart, Matt Barkley, and Todd Marinovich. They are all success stories in different ways. I do want to add that the JV football is looking pretty Division I ready this year, and they are a daunting lineup for anyone who is trying to oppose them. This is, as was mentioned, the only high school to produce 3 Heisman Trophy winners. And so I would like to share and have included in the record a quote from Heisman Trophy winner, powerhouse and Pasadena bred, Bryce Young, one of the best quarterbacks college football has seen in the past decade. And yes, I said it. Congratulations to Coach Rollo, who has had such a positive impact in my life. From when I first entered his program, he always believed in me and pushed me to be the best version of myself on and off the field. While he is retiring from coach football, I know he will always be there for the young men who had the privilege to call Coach Rollo their coach. I am honored to have played for him and now call him a friend. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank my colleague. Bruce Rollinson is a 1967 graduate of Mater Dei. His team won the CIF 4A championship in 1965 and played in the game of the decade against Anaheim High School in Anaheim Stadium. Played defensive back and wide receiver for John McKay at USC. Played in the 1970 Rose Bowl when USC beat Michigan. Rollo became the head coach of Mater Dei in 1988 after 7 years as an assistant. And by the time it was all over, here are the numbers that qualify him for legendary status and precisely the reason we are standing here today. Overall record, 341 wins, 87 tough losses, 2 draws, 8 CIF championships, 4 state championships, 5 national championships, a parade of NCAA players, many of whom went on to prosperous National Football League careers. Mr. Speaker, I've also asked one of my distinguished colleagues from California across the aisle to join us in this tribute today. He happens to be Rollo's own congressman from the Santa Ana, California area. And with that, for as much time as he prefers to consume, I'm going to recognize my friend from California, Lou Correa.
Coach Rawlinson, congratulations. You put not Santa Ana, but Santana on the map. Thank you very much. You've often said you create the effort and God controls the outcome. Words to live by. Thank you very much. Last year, I had the opportunity, I was at home on a Friday night, and one of my favorite activities is to go and watch high school football games. Santa Ana Bowl, right about a mile away from my house. This night, you were there coaching. Mater Dei versus St. John Bosco. An epic game, of course. As I got there, looked around, I was on the sidelines, your side, by the way, not Bosco's side. Next to me, I saw the USC football head coach, Bama's head coach, must have been every head coach from the top 20 schools in the country, watching your game, watching your athletes play football that night. Unbelievable. At the end of the game, we had a bunch of helicopters come by and take these coaches away. Unbelievable night. We're going to honor you today. Honor well deserved. You're Orange County's all-time leader, coaching, winningest coach. You graduated from Mater Dei High School in '67. And in 1966, you all played against Anaheim High School, my high school. I'm a colonist too. You played against my coach, Claire Van Horbeck. This is our helmet, sir. Do you remember it? I wore this helmet that night in 1966. It was the game of the decade. Anaheim Stadium. Record number people attending that night. Almost 33,000 people in attendance that night. 1966. And Coach Rollins, if I look at this poster here, we edged you out that night. We won 7-12. Those 7 points, it's my understanding you scored. And of course, you can see the players at the bottom there. I think that's probably you. One of those players is you. Coach Van Horbeck preceded you in Anaheim, Orange County. I think we all learned from him. If I think back to the days I played football under Coach Van Horbeck, the one thing the coach taught me was when you get hit, when you get knocked down, when you get bloodied, you get up and you keep going. I still remember those days. Football practices, 3 hours, no water, no rest. And heaven would help you if you made a mistake. You had to go run laps. Full uniform on, helmet on. That was the discipline we grew up with in Orange County. Coach Rollins, I'm telling you what you already know. We were a community, we are a community in Orange County. And I'm honored to say today that we're a family. I often would drive down Bristol Street to take my kids to the local elementary school, and I'd watch your team practice, admiring you and respecting you because, sir, you put us on the map again and again and again. You graduated from Mater Dei. You came back to teach in 1976. Mater Dei, that's the year I graduated from Anaheim High School. Like my colleague, Mr. Womack, said, 4 national championships. More Heisman trophies than, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 universities, more Heisman than anybody else in the country. I'm not going to say goodbye, sir, but I will say that you'll be missed as a head coach. And I know and I do hope your successor will carry on your tradition, because we need to make sure we continue to build champions in Santa Ana, California. Let me conclude by saying that success of individuals like you got to have a team partner. Mrs. Rollinson, thank you for giving him the strength to do what he does. I think at the end of the day, we all married up, and we did well. Like my colleagues have said, you're a great American, but I would say you're also a great member of our Orange County family. Thank you. God bless. Go Colonists, and go Mater Dei. Thank you very much.
I thank my friend. Mr. Speaker, a number of friends, family, and colleagues of Coach Rollinson wanted to offer their congratulations as part of this tribute today. Time will not permit me to read all of those comments, but I do want to read one, because this comes from the Rollinson family. Caroline Flanagan, Catherine, who I know as Kat Peterson. We are so incredibly proud of our dad, Coach Rollinson, known to his grandchildren as Coach, or even occasionally Coachy. Growing up, he made us part of the Mater Dei football family, but he also made sure that when he came home, football was on the back burner, and he was just our dad. He stayed up late to help us study for tests, got up with us when we had an early start class, and was present in every way. When we were in college, a call from him was an instant mood boost, and he knew how to fire us up for a test so that we walked in feeling like we could either take an exam or play a football game. He is truly the best person we know. He lives his values day in and day out. He makes us better people. And he has that rare gift of being able to bring out the best in everyone who knows him. His faith and his family are what drive him. And for the past 7 years, we've gotten to see him in possibly his greatest role as a grandfather. Our kids get to learn from the best and be loved by the best. Coach Rollinson has won numerous championships and accolades on the football field, but we are most proud of him for who he is to our family, and we can't wait to see what the next chapter brings. We love you, Coach. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask unanimous consent to include into the record of today's tribute the remaining comments from family, friends, fellow coaches, and others. I ask unanimous consent that they be included into the record.
Without objection.
In October, Coach Bruce Rollinson coached his last game after 34 years of distinguished service. The sport has said goodbye to a legend. Today, here on the floor of the People's House, you've heard of the remarkable accomplishments of this dedicated coaching professional. I want the country to know what the hundreds of young men who have worn the Mater Dei Monarch colors already know, that Rollo is not just a coach, he is a great man. So from all of us, for my colleagues who have spoken here today, for sports fans across America who love and appreciate excellence in coaching, we offer our congratulations to Bruce Rollinson. From your players, your coaches, your friends, and your family, enjoy a well-earned retirement. Go Monarchs! And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. I rise as a proud American. I love my country, but I also rise as a proud, liberated Democrat. I rise, Mr. Speaker, as a person who is proud of his heritage. I am the proud descendant, Mr. Speaker, of the enslaved people whose hands helped to construct the Capitol itself. I'm proud of my history, and because I'm proud of my history, I think that many people would agree that the topic I will embrace today is most appropriate. I'm proud to be here today, Mr. Speaker, to speak on a resolution that passed this House today. I thank the leadership for allowing the resolution to come to the floor. I'm especially proud of the fact that when the resolution came to the floor, all who voted for the resolution. There were no nays, Mr. Speaker. 100% of those voting, over 405 to be exact, voted for this resolution. I'm proud to be one of the 405 who voted yes for this resolution. I didn't have an opportunity to speak on the resolution when it was presented on the floor of the House. I was not available at the time here in Washington, D.C., but not aware of the exact time that it was going to be heard. But I knew that there would be another opportunity for me. So today, I take advantage of the opportunity afforded me. Grateful I am to those who have afforded me the opportunity to speak on H-Con Res 25. H-Con Res 25. H-Con Res 25 authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for a ceremony as part of the commemoration of the days of remembrance of victims of the Holocaust. I thank those who brought this resolution to the attention of the Congress. Representative Gustav, Representative Snyder, Representative Miller, that would be Max Miller, and Landsman. I thank all of them for bringing this resolution to the attention of the members so that we would have an opportunity to express our desire to see this resolution come to fruition. A resolution, Mr. Speaker, that would commemorate the days of remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust. Mr. Speaker, in all of history, there is no event comparable to the Holocaust. It is one of the great crimes ever committed against humanity. This is not to say that there are not other crimes against humanity that were committed. This is to say that this one is unlike any other. And I'm proud of the way our country has recognized the need for remembrance of the Holocaust. I'm proud because I have friends that I have spoken to who are Jewish, and my friends have explained to me some of the things that you don't read in books about the atrocities associated with the Holocaust. When I last spoke to my friend David Mintzberg about his father and mother, who were survivors of the Holocaust, he and I both had tears to well in our eyes as he presented the story to me. He explained to me, Mr. Speaker, how his mother, Edith, was on a train, how through some quirk of fate, they stopped the train and people were told to just run. Run! And they ran for their lives. They ran for their lives. It was about 2 to 3 a.m. They ran and they ran and they ran. They didn't just run that night. They didn't just run for the next week. They didn't just run for days. They didn't just run for months. They ran for years, surviving as best as they could. It hurts my heart to go through the recounting of what was said to me. But it's important for people to understand why remembrance is important. His father, Joseph, 16, 17 years of age, on a train on its way to one of the death camps. When persons on the train were able to pry open bars so that he could slip through. And he did. And he ran. Didn't run for days or weeks. He ran through the snow. He ran for years, approximately 5 years on the run. His life hanging in the balance. The story, as told, caused me to understand more how precious the lives of people can be in times of peril. When there is seemingly no way out. But then along life's way for many of them, there were persons known as righteous Gentiles. His father is said to have had an encounter with such a person. And these righteous Gentiles, by the way, have been recognized for what they did to rescue persons during this time of great peril. Righteous Gentiles, righteous people who understood that lives were hanging in the balance. I've been to Yad Vashem. It's my understanding that Yad Vashem has a special place for the recognition of righteous Gentiles. So his father ran, his mother ran, they survived. The unfortunate thing is, not all did, and many, many millions did not. We want to remember those who did not. This is a time for remembrance. Remembrance is the honorable thing to do. It's the thing that we ought to do as we are doing it on an annual basis, so that never again will we face the horrors of a Holocaust. I'm proud to say that if this resolution passes the Senate, then my hope is and belief is that in the visitor center, there will be the opportunity for us to have some of those survivors appear, and hopefully, if it's God's will, we may actually hear a story from someone who actually survived. The history that we can record based upon those who are with us and who can share, that history is fading. We need to do all that we can to capture as much of it as fast as we can. So I'm proud, and I plan to be in the Visitor Center. The Visitor Center is a place, a special place where this kind of event should take place. Events that commemorate the lives lost ought to take place in our Visitor Center. This belongs to the public. Lives lost ought to be commemorated in such a facility because it is within a dome. There's a space there, huge space. The dome is adjacent to it, not quite there, but nearby. But in that center is a replica of the statue that sits atop the dome of the Capitol. The statue is one that I have great reverence for. The statue of freedom. This statue of freedom was sculpted by Thomas Crawford, and it sits atop the Capitol dome, 288 feet high, 96 feet in diameter. This replica is there in the Visitor Center. Freedom of symbol of freedom. Symbol of freedom so that the world will know what we stand for in this country. We stand for freedom. We stand for liberty and justice for all. Yes, I agree with those who would say that we still have much work to do. Yes, we do. And I plan to be a part of doing that work. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to recognize the work that has been done. Many lives have been sacrificed so that we could be at this point in our history. So I'm proud of the work that's been done, but I'm also proud to say that that work affords us the opportunity to be there with this replica of the Statue of Freedom right there in the Visitor Center for a day of remembrance. And I'm going to invite friends, to the extent that we have space available for me to do so, to come and be a part of this. This is a time that all Americans ought to come together. This is a time for us to acknowledge that the world has not always been kind to people, and that those who are survivors ought to be respected, and those who did not survive, their lives ought to be commemorated. H. Con Res 25, proud to have voted for it, authorizing the use of Emancipation Hall in the Capitol Visitor Center for a ceremony as part of the commemoration of the days of remembrance of victims of the Holocaust. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of this House, and I thank all of the members who cast their votes, those who made it possible for the votes to be cast, and I pray that the God that I worship will stand with us and never allow such an atrocity to visit us again. But I also know that the hands of people created the Holocaust, and it will take the hands of people to prevent it from ever happening again. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 9th, 2023, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rutherford, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate St. Johns County's Bartram Trails High School girls soccer team for completing a remarkable 2022-2023 soccer season. Last month, the team won their third Class 7A Florida High School Athletic Association title in just 4 years, earning them a spot at number 1 in the nation. Number 1 in the nation. Under Coach Jen Rodriguez's guidance, seniors Olivia Bory, Sophia Magdalene, and Reese Henley scored the winning goals in their final game and secured Bartram Trails place as Northeast Florida's first public school to finish unbeaten in girls soccer. This impressive record is a testament to the discipline, focus, and skill the team has demonstrated on the soccer field throughout their season. I look forward to following along as they set new goals and break new records. And Mr. Speaker, all I've got to say now is go Bears. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Bill Rogers. Bill has dedicated his life and creativity to developing safety equipment for some of our nation's most highly skilled military and law enforcement elite tactics teams. It all began in 1969 when Bill became the youngest candidate to be selected for the FBI Academy. And then after losing his handgun during a pursuit, Bill decided to craft his own holster, a product which he later named the Kydex holster. And in 1973, he presented the holster to the FBI, and the agency went on to buy the Kydex holsters and integrate them for their agency-wide use. With his newfound success, Bill Rogers began the Rogers Holster Company and developed Rogers Shooting School to begin teaching gun use and safety skills. It was in the 70s and 80s, Bill began working with the Department of Defense. He was training Navy SEALs, developing new styles of safety holsters in it, and accepting shooting school contracts from special operations units within the U.S. military and many international units. Many of these units continue to operate here today. In 1980, Bill Rogers sold Rogers Holster Company to Safariland, which is a U.S.-based safety equipment manufacturing, and actually helped create Team Safariland, the first professional team in action shooting sports. Bill continued to expand his business by developing a series of competition holsters specifically designed for sporting use. I met Bill in the late 1980s when I was actually the training commander for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as we were transitioning from wheel guns over to semi-automatic pistols. And it was during that time that I asked Bill if he could help us to develop a holster with a locking mechanism, a retention holster. And little did I know what would come of that. But I was struck by his humility in the face of such success and his ability to innovate firearm safety and training. What I didn't know was that while Bill was developing this retention holster for the Jacksonville Sheriff's officers, he was simultaneously being commissioned by the U.S. Navy to train Navy classes of Navy SEALs. In 2017, Bill went on to contract with all 5 military branches, an incredible achievement and active service to our nation, hundreds of recruits have been skillfully trained and protected under his guidance. His security holsters and training methods have also saved countless law enforcement officers from one of the most common events an officer ever experiences on the job, and that is a perpetrator trying to take control of their gun. If you look at any uniformed police officer today, it's very likely that that officer is wearing a Rogers retention holster. As a lifelong law enforcement officer, I am honored to recognize Bill Rogers' contribution to our nation, to the safety of our law enforcement officers, and on behalf of Northeast Florida, we want to thank Bill for his continued work to keep our officers, our community, and our country safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, Congress passed legislation that guarantees parents have a right to be involved in their children's education and to hold their school administrators accountable. At face value, this should not be a controversial bill. Yet it passed with a slim majority of 213 to 208. It's a parent's Bill of Rights. Yet, 203 of my Democratic colleagues voted against affirming parental involvement in a child's education. I would say I'm surprised, but this opposition is just more of what we have already seen from Democrat leaders and the White House over the last 2 years. A campaign against parents characterized by unnecessary school closures, masks in the classrooms, DOJ repressing parents' rights to participate at school board meetings, and an effort to label concerned parents as domestic terrorists. And what do we have to show for 2 years of this kind of, quote, leadership? Reports of historic learning losses and higher levels of anxiety and depression in our school-aged children. The fact that we even need legislation like this further proves how far we've come in this country. It's an unfortunate reality that there are individuals across this nation actively questioning a parent's right to know what their child is exposed to in the classroom. Questioning that. A teacher in Arizona has even suggested that because she has a master's degree, she is more qualified to make a judgment call on what children are taught in the classroom, and that parents are the ones who need to be vetted before they can voice their opinion. She even went so far as to say this: we must remember, and I quote, "We must remember that the purpose of public education is not only to teach what parents want their children to be taught, but to teach them what society needs to be taught." Well, Mr. Speaker, I reject this idea that my children are her children. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't believe a parent's right to have a say in their child's life ends at the edge of the schoolyard. Parents are the primary stakeholders in their child's education. I'm proud to have voted for the Parents' Bill of Rights today, which will ensure parents have the right to know what's being taught in schools and to see reading materials that are presented to their children, the right to be heard at school board hearings, the right to seize school budgets and spending, the right to protect their child's privacy by prohibiting student data from being distributed to tech companies, and finally, the right to be updated on any violent activity that occurs at their school. Opposition to these reasonable provisions is just one more of the same government knows best attitude that led us to where we are now. I'll put this plainly because this issue hits home, very close to home for me, and for every American family, regardless of party affiliation. The future of this nation rests on the education of the next generation. And while I believe that teaching is a noble profession and our educators deserve recognition for their service, there is not a world in which a loving parent should be separated from taking an active role in their child's education. As a proud father, grandfather, I am committed to ensuring education decisions are made as close as possible to the classroom so that the future of this nation remains rooted in freedom for all. But it needs to be made with students, parents, and teachers. And with that, I thank you and I yield back. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until noon on Monday, next for morning hour debate.